with the advent of the personal affordable automobile, it was one of the greatest developments for individual freedoms in modern history. It's little wonder that the World Economic Forum and other authoritarians want to bring personal auto use to an end. Now, going back, Henry Ford might not have been a friend of labor unions, but when he released the Model T, he empowered individuals and workers more in a year than unions had managed to do in decades. Ford gave citizens the gift of unfettered, affordable transportation free of any state controls. It can't be understated how important this development was. Families with personal automobiles now had the mobility range to comparison shop for everything, from jobs to consumer products to healthcare. Prior to the ability to own individual cars, citizens were dependent upon public transit, such as trains or streetcars, if they were locally available, or horse and buggy. Only the rich could afford the novelty of a personal vehicle. That all changed. People were essentially captives of their local jurisdictions before the Model T came out. Many company towns had just a single employer, owned everything from the local grocery store to housing. Once a family owned a car, they had the ability to travel elsewhere. Local business owners and politicians were forced to recognize the reality that people could vote with their feet, or their wheels in this case, and leave if they weren't being treated right. New and creative enterprises came about. The most early form of Amazon, as the traveling salesman could travel town to town and sell innovative new consumer products. This spawned more competition and helped the cost of goods come down for people in general. Families, of course, could then take road trips and vacations that the prior generation never could have dreamed of. Motels and tourist attractions developed and spread across North America to serve the demand. Most importantly of all, it was totally uncontrolled. People could get in the car and drive wherever they pleased. They were only limited by their own fuel budget and time. Our modern authoritarians recognize that citizens with free mobility are difficult to control. And they're using climate change, of course, as their reason to crack down on that free movement. The WEF has been putting out articles critical of car ownership for years. Adherents to the WEF ideology have been helping their agenda along at every level of government. Municipalities are removing parking and using traffic calming measures in order to make driving less convenient. Zoning is being used to discourage new developments that allow parking, and bike lanes are being created on top of busy roadways, whether there's a realistic demand for bike lanes or not. Federal and provincial governments are taxing fuel and large vehicles to drive the cost up. They're also bullying auto manufacturers into giving up on building combustion vehicles and making them retool for electrical vehicles. Subsidies are a part of this as well, since the electric vehicles aren't commercially viable. Despite all the efforts to push people into electric vehicles for over a decade, people haven't embraced them. They remain an expensive novelty item for urban commuters and virtue signalers. The infrastructure for generating enough power for an all-electric national fleet of vehicles doesn't exist, and new power generation projects aren't even being built to service them. We're not going to transition, guys. What is going to happen is we're going to see a shortage of combustion engine vehicles as manufacturing has been disrupted by government intervention. The cost of gas-powered cars is going to go through the roof, while electric vehicles will still remain impractical and expensive. This is when the government will swoop in to the rescue. Nationalizing transportation, essentially. People will be relying on public transit, whether it's through local or long-distance bus rides and trains, and of course, federally regulated air travel. The freedom and individual ability to travel wherever one wants is going to be gone. Think of how this will work in a cashless society. What if the government wants to quell a future protest? It'd be easy to stop all public transit from reaching the protest sites, won't it? Individuals could have travel rights removed for a myriad of reasons, and they might be limited to staying within certain zones. How easy would it be for the state to control the transfer of goods to certain areas? Would they do so? Does this sound impossible? Well, look at what the state did during the pandemic in this last couple of years. We couldn't even sit down for a meal without being forced to wear a mask on the way to the table and providing proof of being medicated. So for them to tell us where we can go at times, yeah, that's not beyond belief at all. Our individual freedoms are being stripped one by one. Speech, expression, protest, press, and the sanctity of the body have all been eroded this last couple of years. Our right to unfettered mobility is being threatened too. The personal automobile is more than just a convenience. It's an integral part of our democratic society and our rights as individuals. As with so many initiatives by the state, the motivation isn't to protect the climate or public health. It's all about control. We need to stand up for the personal auto now while we still can, because it's a lot more important than a lot of people realize.